to the Horses Now podcast, your go-to source for everything in the world of horse racing. I'm your host, Teague Ridge, and as always, I'm thrilled to be joined by the legendary Kenny McPeek. Whether you're a seasoned racing fan or new to the track, we've got the insight, stories, and strategies you don't want to miss. Kenny, what's up, my man?
Well-traveled.
Well-traveled. All right.
Well-traveled.
So this is going to be the main focus of this podcast. So you were over across the pond. You went to Tattersalls. What were the highlights? Let's talk about it.
Well, Tattersalls is probably the most historic auction house for thoroughbred racehorses in the world.
Okay.
And so I went over and attended their Book 2 session, which is their probably middle market horses.
Yep.
And managed to buy 5 for assorted different clientele.
So you got 5 of them.
Yeah. So we made a trip over and fortunately was able to spend some time with one of our daughters.
Okay.
A couple of the grandkids.
Awesome. Sherry
and Annie went as well while I worked. And it was good, kind of doubled down as a little personal and professional trip.
All right. Well, we'll get to the horses here in a second. So what was the highlight of the personal side?
Oh, goodness. Annie and Sherry got to spend some time with Rachel. I myself stayed in Newmarket the whole time.
Okay.
But they just came down for a partial day visit. But the girls they rode up and stayed in Newmarket for 4 days. I'm sorry, they stayed in Sheffield for 4 days. And then from there, actually the highlight was the girls flew from London to Miami to go to the Taylor Swift concert.
Ooh, all right. That's a highlight. Those tickets aren't easy to come by.
That wasn't a ticket I needed to have. So I didn't go to that. I let them go on to that, but they had a great time.
Anything from a touristy sightseeing? What was the coolest thing you saw while you were over there?
I don't know. I've been a lot of times over the years.
Okay.
So I really don't look at it as a tourist trip.
Got it.
Newmarket is the home of the thoroughbred. This is where the horse was developed. And so so when you go into Newmarket, you're really touching history. And they've got probably some of the nicest horses you'll ever see in the world presented at auction. And so I was able to had a partner in crime over there, a guy named Robbie Mills, who was our liaison or contact over there in Newmarket, and he helped me shortlist horses, and we worked the Tattersalls sales grounds, which is a very interesting sales grounds in itself because it's got the layout of those stables is unique, and it's actually challenging to find horses in the Newmarket stable area because you've got uphill, downhill.
Yeah.
The way the yard's organized is very interesting. And you have to have, I say they ought to offer you a GPS to find your way around there. But I learned it pretty well. It's no problem.
How did the prices stack up compared to the sales you do in the States?
You know, the Book 1 Tattersalls was just out the roof. I mean, they had a $6 million yearling. And so that was a huge number. That was more than
$6 million. What makes a horse worth $6 million?
Actually, 4.4 million or 4.3 million guineas.
Okay.
So that's the translation over there.
Oh yeah.
In the guineas.
Yeah.
Which is a currency that you really don't use other than at horse sales.
Okay.
In English horse sales, and so 4.3 million guineas is $1.37. So
okay.
Multiply that.
I gotcha.
I think it's just under $6 million. And the market was massively strong in Book 1.
Okay.
That's why I didn't attend Book 1 because I am kind of relegated to being a Book 2 second.
And that's by choice, right? I mean, that's something you want to do.
Well, I've got this great base of clients that have been my foundation of my career, so I'm not going to give them up, and so we continue to do that, and I think you get more value in the middle and the lower market, but at the same time, there are people that like playing in the upper market, and a lot of the Arabs buy there was an outfit called Amo Racing, which is very strong. They've been second in the English Derby a couple of times, but they were very active, and Sheikh Mohammed ended up being leading buyer.
Okay.
So it is a very, very intense yearling sale over there.
Now, are any of these horses attached to horses that people in the States would know the names of?
The pedigrees are a little bit out of the box. I bought, of the 5 I bought a Memes colt. was 230,000 guineas, which would be just over 300,000 US.
Okay.
I bought an Ardad filly. None of these pedigrees would be recognizable to most American horsemen. I bought a Supremacy filly, a Supremacy colt. Both of those, Supremacy is a son of Memes, and that's a sire line that goes back to Northern Dancer.
Okay.
So there is some overlap there. And then I bought a Tattersalls colt that was out of a Kitten's Joy mare, second dam sire Pulpit.
Gotcha.
And had some dirt in his pedigree.
Okay.
And Tattersalls is a son of Siuni, which is the best stallion in France.
I gotcha.
So yeah, it's a little bit, well, it's foreign, right?
It is foreign. It's very foreign. So, all right, what was, obviously the layout's different. Sounds like the pricing structure is different. What would you consider the biggest difference at this sale?
Well, really the pedigrees that we've already touched
Yeah.
on. It's the pedigrees are kind of, they're pretty much proven grass runners.
Okay, I was going to get to that.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I look at a horse the same, and I still believe that the people that are buying over there look at the similar way that I do.
Okay.
And I do think that horsemen as a whole, and we're all competing in this market, are attracted to a good horse will really run on anything.
Sure.
And so you have to look at them the same way. And horses that I found attractive that I thought were going to sell well, sold well. And regardless of whether they were turf or dirt. But most of these horses will race on grass in their career. And in my case, I'm going to probably bring these over and we're going to give them a training regimen on dirt.
Okay.
And then we'll figure out whether they handle the dirt or whether we end up being pushed over to grass racing with them. But there's a lot of grass racing here in Kentucky.
Plenty of turf.
New York, it's all good.
Plenty of turf. All right, so what's the plan for these 5 horses? So will you bring them to Florida? You bring them to Lexington? What are you thinking?
So Robbie Mills is handling these young horses in Newmarket now. And we've already contacted a company called IRT, which is International Racehorse Transport.
Okay.
Matt Hogg handles that. And then they've given me a couple of options on where we want to ship them, if we want to come into Chicago or if we want to come into Indianapolis. So FedEx stops the horse travel till after Christmas. So we have to do it soon.
Yeah, because it's their peak season. That makes sense.
And for people wondering, we FedEx these horses.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They come over FedEx.
That's crazy. Actually, we have an episode. I think it's our second episode. We're really kind of getting into detail there, which blows my mind that you can FedEx a horse. But so you will fly these horses over at some point. How quickly will you try to get them over here?
I'm probably going to be here by November 2nd.
Oh, so quick.
Yeah, and then we're going to bring them into Kentucky. Let them settle into Kentucky for a little bit. Probably keep them at Magdalena for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then we'll migrate them onto Ocala, Florida, or Silverleaf Hills Training Center.
Now, do horses, when you completely change their environment like that, do they take a while to settle down? Do they get antsy? Do they get nervous? Do you see where some horses handle that better than others, or are they all kind of the same?
I don't think that they're too much trouble. I mean, they're very well handled by English horsemen going into this, and so we don't have a lot of difference there. I think it's much more difficult to acclimate and transfer a South American horse than it is a Northern Hemisphere English or French horse.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't see. And these horses haven't been handled to be saddled, bridled, so all that'll be new to them. So they're this is a fresh start.
Okay, makes sense. And Newmarket, like you said, it's kind of like heaven for a lot of these thoroughbred things. So pretty cool. Did you see any racing while you were there, or was it all just looking at the sales?
Well, they ran the Dewhurst while I was there, and unfortunately, and I was invited to attend, and I had a really first class seat there, but I had too much work to do at that time. And the Dewhurst was won by Godolphin, and they've pretty much swept. They've swept the American 2-year-old races and English 2-year-old
Okay.
races. Good often has.
Yeah.
So the work they're doing right now is high level. They've been on top of the game, but I don't think I've ever seen them quite as strong as they've become.
So let's let our listeners in one more time on your ultimate goal here. So obviously you won the Derby. You've won numerous Triple Crown races, but your goal here is to actually win the English Derby as well, correct?
Yeah, I'd love to win the English Derby. I think it's a race that's probably one of the most interesting races in the world, and some say that the thoroughbred was made for this race, and it'll be a challenge, but it's also a horse race in the sense that you just bring a good horse, and you certainly have to hit the details. But the course is uphill, downhill, very much like Kentucky Down.
Right.
And it's not a course you can practice over.
Okay, gotcha. Our listeners probably hear Sonny there in the background. He's getting anxious over there. All right, so what I want to do is, before we get off of this, Kenny, is there anything else that we need to tell our listeners about your trip?
I don't think so. The over in the back's probably the most difficult part, especially I took a day flight over early in the morning out of Chicago, and then got a day flight coming back. So that's pretty stressful.
How long's the flight?
7, 8, 9 hours.
It's a lot of time on a plane.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah,
it's a whole lot of time on a plane. Okay, so one of the things I want to get into today is throughout our 14 episodes now, we've had a lot of comments that we haven't really gotten to. So we've got a lot of questions. So, Kenny, I'm going to throw a myriad of things at you here, and so we can get caught up with our listeners. The first thing I want to do is I want to give a shout out to the podcast, Two Broads at the Track, Mandy and Robin. They've been avid listeners of ours. So thank you, Mandy and Robin, for being listeners and sharing what we do. And I listened to your podcast, and you guys are off to a great start. So keep doing what you're doing. They want to talk about the process for approaching workouts. Do you approach the workouts the same way, or are there different approaches as far as how often and how long horses gallop and breeze?
So, great question. So we typically work horses Friday and Saturday.
Okay.
And I tend to have a weekend workout, and we don't train on Sundays, which is something I learned from an Australian trainer, that the Australians don't train on Sundays, which is I think great, because I think the staff needs a break. But we will schedule our workouts for Friday and Saturday, and as horses come into these workouts, if they've got miles under their gallops, then we start them out at shorter distances, a quarter of a mile, and then we graduate them up to 3/8, half mile, even up to 5 furlongs.
Okay.
But you have to do pre-race vet exams before a workout.
Yep. Right.
You have to we need to feel comfortable that the horse is healthy going into the workout, but it is a requirement nowadays that you have your veterinarian examine your horse prior to the workout, and then it's a matter of matching. Where you, like this morning, Greg Geyer and I here at Churchill, I just came from the barn, and we matched a couple of colts that are going to work together this weekend tomorrow. Okay. And we've got a set of fillies. Actually, I think we're going to work 3 fillies together tomorrow.
Okay.
And you want to match an A horse against an A horse.
Right. Similar talent.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to overmatch anybody.
Okay.
And you pretty much try to let them both think they won.
Yeah.
Because I do think the mental aspect of training horses is
cool.
important. Don't let one get badly beaten in the morning. So you try to guesstimate the.
Well, I found it very interesting that you would work Mystic Dan and Torpedo Anna together, but that's because, hey, they're 2 A horses, right? And you just want them going at each other, and they push each other.
Yeah, there were only 2 that could keep up with each other.
Yeah. Okay, so what do these breeze times tell a trainer?
Well, you'd love to see, when you get to 5 furlongs, when a horse will go a minute flat going 5 furlongs, you've got a really good horse typically. But you can't judge a horse up to a half mile. Most horses can give you a good half mile. Mm-hmm. But then the separation really comes from the half mile to the 5/8.
Interesting.
Yeah, so 4 furlong, the 4th furlong, no problem. The 5th, you start seeing horses backing up.
Okay.
Other ones going on.
Okay.
And so the further the work, I think the more information you get.
That makes sense.
So you might keep them together. Let's say we're going to work a half mile in company. You're going to work them there. You're going to ask them for the half mile. Then when they hit the wire, you'll tell the riders, okay, let the best one gallop out in front.
Gotcha.
If you're better. If they gallop out together is probably the best result, but sometimes you need to know the difference and go to the wire with encouragement, but then after that, a good horse will gallop out strong. And a really top horse rarely gets outworked.
Interesting. All right, we've got a few more here from Mandy and Robin. They've heard that the times mean nothing, but the observation of how the horse is running is what matters. What does Kenny look for when he watches his horses work out?
Well, you watch a rider's hands. If the rider, let's just use an example, if the rider on the inside's all elbows and utilizing the whip, and the rider on the outside's hands are setting back, holding, then you get an idea of who's better of the two.
Okay.
And so you definitely need to watch the way a rider
watching the rider's hands. Now, did you get much feedback from the rider afterwards?
Oh yeah. One of the first questions you ask when they pull up and they're jogging home, who had more horse? And like this is where Brian and Colby come in handy.
Yeah.
Who had more horse?
Right.
And then Brian might say he did, or I did.
Yeah.
Or they were a good match.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. All right. What allows you to see the progression and abilities of young horses during these workouts?
Well, you get a chance to see how well they finish and how well they gallop out. It's a big deal.
Okay.
But horses that do it easy are certainly you get excited about.
Yeah.
And some horses struggle.
Yeah.
We have a pretty nice filly down at Churchill or down at Keeneland right now that we thought was going to be okay, but then she's really struggling in the workouts. And most really naturally talented horses handle it, and they do their thing, and they don't get beaten even early on. A good, really athletic, talented horse handles things easily.
So, what makes you decide that an unraced horse should go on turf versus the dirt, or vice versa?
A combination of pedigree and conformation, how they're made, how their feet are made, their overall action. You certainly want to see some turf in the pedigree, maybe.
Okay. But
you can see the way a horse's feet are made, with they're a little bit pancake or flatter, longer pasterns, angled, their hip. I think that like the average person couldn't do that, but for me it's pretty easy. But you get what I call a box-footed horse, or what we call here in America a club-footed horse.
Okay. Is
a closed hoof, and that hoof is probably more appropriate for dirt.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and then if they have a closed hoof or sometimes you call box foot or club type foot, then those heels are made different. And so soft ground, they'll stick into it. All right. Whereas a horse with a flatter foot will roll over it.
Now, is that something you can see early on in a horse's life, or is that something that progresses over a horse's lifetime?
No, it's once they've gotten to about the yearling year, then their feet in general pretty much are consistent.
Got it.
You just try to keep any quarter cracks or foot issues out of the way. But if you've got good blacksmiths, usually it's not a problem.
Got it. Well, once again, thank you, Mandy and Robin. Those are some great questions. Keep them coming. Keep listening. And once, if you have time, go check out their podcast, Two Broads at the Track. All right, moving on. You should have asked Ken, how much does he mark up the price of the horse before he sells those 20% shares? Most buy a horse at, say, $200,000, then mark it up to $300,000 to $400,000, and then charge back to the owners if you sell him at an astonishingly rate. We recently sold a 2-year-old colt to WinStar for $700,000, but the ownership company took a huge amounts of cash and expenses before the owners saw a cent. What would you say to that, Kenny?
So those are pretty simple, and it's actually a really good question because there's risk involved.
Right.
And so let's say I buy a horse for $50,000. What a typical 20% share, we usually just divide by 4. And so a typical 20% share would be $12,500. Okay. And then that leaves, so the first 4 shares pay for the horse. Right. And then there's a 20% share that sometimes I sell the 10%, and I almost always keep at least 10%. And sometimes I keep 20. But the risk involved is there. I've had horses that I've bought that got hurt or had one run through a fence the next day. that wasn't partnered out, and that's a bullet I have to take.
Yeah,
that's hard, but the markup is modest. It's I think 20% is a fair number. The longer we've had a horse in our hands, we usually increase it as the expenses have been incurred from the beginning of the initial purchase.
Yep.
And same thing, we try to be fair about it. We're not going to get rich off the 20% markup. We're going to cover a little risk. We're going to make sure that we've got good people in. We have to manage the veterinarian. We have to manage the cost from the hammer, and typically those partnerships don't come together really quickly. They usually take a little time. Sometimes they get done in a week. Sometimes it's months.
Okay.
And so I think 20% is a reasonable number, considering that we do incur the risk.
I like it. That's a great answer, and hopefully that sheds a little bit extra light there on the shares side. All right, so Kenny rode Corey Lannery for years, and then nothing. What happened? Is Corey over the hill or something else?
Well, Corey's a fantastic jockey, and I've gotten into such rhythm with Brian Hernandez that I really do all my business with Frank Bernice. We talked about that on the past podcast. And Corey has been really just done a great job for me.
Sure.
But we've had some horses that maybe I went different directions with him. I didn't always go to the fairgrounds. He went to the fairgrounds.
Gotcha.
Sometimes I went to Gulfstream.
Gotcha.
I think he tried Gulfstream for a winter, but then went back to the fairgrounds. Brian's had the same logistics issue. And Corey's had different agents over the years. He's had Jaws. At one point, they were really successful together, and I never have understood why they even changed that up. But when Corey was at his height is when him and Terry Miller, a.k.a. Jaws, is what we call him. And actually, he's had a little heart issue lately. I hope he gets well soon. But he's had a few different agents, and I don't know that he's been in the rhythm that he was at one point. But I can't tell you that he's done a bad job, and he isn't riding the horses he's ridden for me. He's done fine. But like I said, I give most of them to Frank Bernice, and he
makes sense.
We have
it's a relationship
Brian
thing.
And Colby,
yeah, makes sense. All right, so why do so many jockeys stop riding before the finish line? If a jockey does that to you, do you fire him immediately?
I've not had that problem myself. It just depends on, I suppose, whether the horse has got a chance to finish. But I haven't noticed that. That's something that the stewards certainly should watch. And of course, we had Brian and Colby on. They could probably answer that.
Yeah.
It just depends. Maybe the horse didn't feel well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, or it could be something else. A horse just came up and some sort of injury. I think it could be a lot of different things there.
I wouldn't want a rider persevering with a horse that he didn't think was finishing well, doing well, and coming, finishing up the race
right
in a bad way. And I would rather he protected that horse.
Makes sense.
And so that could be good.
All right, so this particular question, I don't know if I'll read the whole question because I don't quite understand all of it, but it's talking about Handsome Pants. We had said on the podcast that Handsome Pants, probably had a pretty bright future, but this particular listener was talking about how Handsome Pants got beat and really didn't fight. So let's start there. The last time Handsome Pants ran, were you disappointed?
We were surprised. We thought he'd run a lot better. Couple things. The winner was very impressive.
Yeah, that was
one hell of a good horse.
And that was a good. There was a lot of good horses in that race, right?
Yeah. But Handsome Pants came out of the race with a sore shin. I mean, really sore.
Got it.
And we hadn't had a shin issue going into the race, and we don't know when or how. But he was the next morning when we checked him. When you pick up a horse's shin, you lift the leg, and you couldn't hardly touch it. I mean, he was very, very sore on it.
Gotcha.
He wasn't lame to the walk, but he's overextended it, wrapped it, something like that. And I sent him over to Magdalena, and we've given him. Has it been? Let's see. He ran on the 4th or the 5th of October.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks.
And I'm going to go look at him again after a full month's gone by.
Okay.
And Yeah, I'm disappointed like they are. We really thought this was a next level type of horse, and he did not fire at all. And like I said, he came back with a small injury, but it X-rayed clean. But he's done something there, and look, he's a young horse, and we're going to give him a little bit of time and reset, and you'll see him. He's going to probably get ready this winter at the fairgrounds, and you'll see him resurface. Probably never won 2 allowance race at Oaklawn or maybe even a stake. We'll see.
Okay. Within that same question, they were asking about a horse named Rendering Judgment. Apparently, this horse ran pretty well, shot out of a gap. The commentators even called it a brilliant ride by Brian Hernandez. But we haven't talked about that horse, this particular listener says. What would you say about Rendering Judgment?
Well, he's in this weekend. He's in on Sunday at Churchill, and this is a horse that's next level. We probably are as high on Rendered Judgment as any 2-year-old in the stable right now.
Okay.
And I see him being on Triple Crown Trail for sure. He's going to get a 2-turn race this weekend. That first race was 7/8, and yes, he worked his way through traffic. He came from way back and came flying late to be a good second. But going a mile and a 16th, he shows that kind of turn of foot finishing. Then he is probably going to look at, for example, if he wins this weekend, he's going to probably go Kentucky Jockey Club.
Okay.
End of November. Yes, we're very, very excited about it.
All right. So is this a particular race this weekend that Rendering Judgment can win?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Maiden 2-year-old, a mile and a 16th.
All right, there we go. I love it. All right. We've talked a lot about claiming horses. I think it would be beneficial for us to go through the claim jail procedures that some tracks implemented. Couldn't even tell you what that means, Kenny.
Okay, so it's easy to explain. I'm not in the claiming business at this stage in my career, but I have been.
Okay.
And when a horse gets claimed, no matter the price, then you have to wait 30 days and raise that horse 25% off the claim price.
Got it.
So if you claim the horse for $20,000, you've got to run for $25,000.
Got it.
And that's typically a 30-day rule. And then if someone claims that horse and wants to take that horse out of state, then there's some restrictions on that horse being able to travel out of state away from the Kentucky circuit.
Right.
And New York and Kentucky are kind of going back and forth on trying to figure out what that timing should be.
Okay.
But I don't know if that inhibits some trade practices, but today the church or the Kentucky racing circuit's so strong that there are other trainers coming in from other states that are claiming horses and then taking them out.
Interesting.
And I think that's something that I think the Kentucky Racing Commission and others are addressing and trying to figure out where there's some balance there. But the jail time's good because it's called jail time.
Yeah.
But you have 30 days and you have to raise that horse in the 30 days, and then after that you can go below.
Do you agree with all the rules in place with that?
Actually, I think they ought to have it wide open where they could run at any level. I mean, if you felt like that a horse needed to run for, let's say you claimed a horse for 25 and you thought it needed to run for 15, I don't know what difference it would make to the racing commission or anybody that races horses. If you decided to drop that horse and it wins, then, isn't that the purpose, is to try to win?
Amen.
Sometimes raising a horse is difficult. And I can't tell you that I'm all that familiar with the claiming rules anymore, right?
That's not something you're into as much.
I used to do it all the time. I was actually had the claimer of the year several times.
Did you really? Well, see, there you go. All right, so this one's, I think, a shot at me. Why do these people who host horse racing shows continue to call Todd Fletcher, not Pletcher? I guess it's with a P. It's Pletcher. Is that correct?
I think I heard you say that one time.
Yeah, I probably said
and I
Fletcher.
Started to correct you.
Yeah, you should have corrected me on that.
Yeah, all right, well.
That's totally my fault.
Todd's a good man. But,
and maybe we can have Todd on at some point. That would be really cool.
That's going to be tough. He's a busy guy.
He is a busy guy.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, he might charge us a big fee.
He might. Well, we'll see though. We may try that.
Todd, what about it, man? Can we get you on?
Come on, Todd. So if you're listening,
he's got some great horses. Always has.
We'd love to have you on the show.
Family's a wonderful people too. His mom and dad. His mother helped me buy my farm in Ocala.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, she's a pretty special lady.
That's awesome. Any broadmare shows coming up?
Any what?
Broodmare.
Broodmare.
See, broad. See, I did it on purpose with the whole Fletcher thing.
Shows.
Yeah, that's the question.
We're going to sell a group of mares at the Keeneland September sale. The Dam of Mystic Dan's going through the phasing sale. I've got a filly named Envoûtante going through the Keeneland sale. We've got a list of really good fillies or good older mares that are going to be sold. So that's another deal.
Another deal. All right, Kenny, anything else we want to talk about before we get out of here?
I don't think I was going to just show. I brought my catalog.
Oh, look at that. Is that from Tattersalls?
Well, no, this is actually the Phasic Tipton catalog.
Okay.
And so I wanted to show people briefly. So this is the book 2 catalog for Phasic Tipton, and there are 800 horses in this catalog.
Wow.
And then we looked at 1,600 horses. Let's see. Yeah, almost exactly 1,600 went through this sale this week. Today is the last day. Actually, 1,614.
Now, do you go through all that?
And we look at every single horse.
Wow.
Dominic Brennan and I look at every single horse. Ray Briner helped on this sale. And so I was going to try to show you here. In the catalog, there's what they call a barn index.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah,
I'm sure
so
you
that
can.
camera right there can. Yeah.
So the barn index, when we go through a consignment, then I'll put what I call a circle and a star. Sometimes I get double stars. And so each horse that I look at, if I draw a line through it, then it's a no-go. And then if a horse is likable, then I come back and look again. And then after I've created, like I said, these are sessions. There were 4 different sessions. After I have created the first run-through list, then I make what I call this is the short list, and then we email this to our clients. And so, and then
How many horses are on a short list?
Well, in this case, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe just at 30 horses ended up on, is it the first day? No, I don't think so. Trying to do the math here. Yeah, looks like about 30 horses first run. So the 30 horses is actually a high number. So this is about a 3 or 4% stakes winning auction.
Okay.
So I know that out of 400 in a day, there are 12 to 16 stakes winners in this sale. So if I have a list of 30, then I go back through them again, and I circle and I actually eliminate horses on sometimes 3rd or 4th looks. Then I make decisions on who I vet.
Yep.
And then, like this particular day, I bought 5 on the day. I bought hip number 80, hip number 180, hip 215, 216, and hip 285. And so then I had clients call. Lance Gasaway took hip number 80. Hip 180 was John Holloman from Little Rock, Arkansas. 215 John took. 216 was, Steve Baker from Dallas, Texas. And then 285 was Rob Hutcherson from here in Louisville.
Yeah.
And so that was day 1. And then day 2, we only bought 3 on day 2, 2 volatile fillies. One went to John Roven. One went to Rob Hutcherson, got another one. And then we had 614 was John Holloman. And then yesterday we bought 4 more. And then today we're going to bid on, we've got a list of horses that we're going to bid on, which I can't divulge. Right?
Yeah, we can't give out the secret sauce there.
Anyway, so today's session is actually down to, out of 400 horses, there's only going to be 4 that I bid on.
So you're doing all this via paper. So you figure out via paper first, then you look at the horse?
Well, we go through the catalog. I get the circles and the stars. I email those numbers to Cindy Greathouse, is kind of my IT person. Mm-hmm. And she gets this put into what they call an equine line short list. And then she's able to email the short list to a list of different people. And then we check vet exams. And like I said, so out of 400, I'm only going to bid on 4.
Wow, that's crazy.
Well, you got to get it right, and that's been my approach forever. First horse I ever bought at a yearling sale. So I had it's kind of a funny story. How much time do we have left?
Come on, let's go. Let's end it with a story, but I love it.
So I'm training 3 horses for a couple of partners, and I'm going to leave the names out.
Okay.
Because I think they have family. But unfortunately, both men have died.
Gotcha.
And so I had this 3 horses in, and I'm training on them. And these horses are, let's just say, really bad horses.
Okay.
And so one of the partners comes out one morning, and we're hanging out, and his name's Roy Monroe.
Okay.
And Roy says, well, what do you think of these 3? And how are my horses doing? So he came out several Saturdays in a row, and I said, well, Roy, I'm doing the best I can with what I got here. So we worked a couple of them out of the gate one day, and it was sad sight. We got outworked like 25 lengths for a half a mile.
Okay.
And Roy said, that's not a very good horse. Okay. No, it's not a very good horse. So Roy called his partner up and said, told him he's out. Because evidently, I don't know what the deal was, but he says he wasn't going to have anything to do with these 3 horses.
Okay.
And he basically gave his shares back.
All right.
So the other guy calls me and says, "You SOB."
What do we do?
Tell him. I said, I told him the truth. I mean, and so I lost 3 horses the next day.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Monroe came out. I think I was only about 25 years old.
Okay.
And he comes out and he apologized for me getting fired. And I said, well, if I get fired for telling the truth, I don't know. I don't think that's a bad thing. So he says, how do I get a good horse? And I said, I'd really like to take a shot and go to the yearling sale. And he didn't know anything about it at all.
Okay.
And I said, give me some money and let me go buy you a yearling.
Yeah.
And so I convinced him to let me do that. And it was this same sale.
Okay.
Phasic tipped in October.
Right.
And it's a challenging sale. At the time, I want to say there were maybe 800 horses in the auction, and I didn't have any help. And so I asked him, I said, Roy, what's your budget? And he says, I was thinking about spending $6,000.
Okay. Which is nothing. Yeah.
I mean, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? I said, Mr. Monroe, I'm going to find you the best $6,000 horse I could find.
Okay.
And so going back to this catalog, I looked at every single horse myself over about 3 days.
Right.
And at the end of the 3 days, I had called everything down. I'd squeezed everything down to 10 horses.
Okay.
And I told him, I said, the stud fee on 8 of these is more than $6,000. And I said, but 2 of them I think could fall in our range. And so we went to bid on the 2 horses. And the first one was a filly by Simply Majestic, and she brings $12,000, and we didn't get her.
Okay.
And so the second one I'm attached to him, and I told him, I said, just get her.
Right.
And she was a big chestnut filly by a stallion named Lord at War.
Okay.
Which it was his first crop, and that's what I kind of specialize in, is buying first crop horses. Right. And so 6,000, somebody bid 6,500, somebody bid 7,500, 8. And I'm sitting next to him. I said, Roy, do it.
Yeah.
So he bids 8,500 and we got her.
Okay.
She ends up being, she ends up racing. She was first, second, third in, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 stake races. I can't remember. I need to look it up.
Oh, wow.
And so she won a stake. My first stakes went to Keeneland. She won at Meadowlands. She was second in Chicago. She went to California and ran in grade 1. She was a really cool filly to be around. And so today I still do it the same. I don't do it any different.
That's awesome.
I squeeze them, pull them down, because I knew at $6,000 I could not afford to be wrong.
Right.
And it was the first opportunity anybody had given me to buy yearlings. Yeah. And so because she was good, and we had a lot of fun with her. And then Roy said 2 years later, he says, I think I want you to buy me a colt. And he sent me to Keeneland September. Okay. And he said my budget was $25,000.
He upped it a little bit.
Yeah. He gave me a generous number. Yeah. It was $200,000, and I could buy 8 colts. And I bought him Tejano Run.
Ah, there you go.
Horse ends up second in the Kentucky Derby. Yeah. So that kind of propelled me professionally as doing this. And today I do it the same way. I haven't changed anything, and I still have a lot of lower market people, which I'm fine. I'm proud of, and it's been a unique ride and journey in the sense that yearlings have been the core of my success.
Right.
Most of all the good horses that I've ever trained have been horses I bought at auction. So
right.
I do think that training horses is challenging, but finding a good horse is more challenging.
What a cool story. Now, do you still buy for this owner? Is he still?
He passed away.
He passed away. Okay.
Yeah, and his family, longtime friends of mine. And then Ray Cottrell was another guy that I bought some horses for. Actually, the funny story on Tahana Run is that I got Ray in, and we drew straws on 3 horses.
Okay.
Because I couldn't decide who got which one.
Right.
And I do deal with that even today. I'm dealing with who's going to get this one, who's going to get that one. And we drew straws, and Roy drew Tahana Run. Ray Cottrell drew a horse named Car Dealer, who ended up making about $500,000. And then another horse's name was Puff of Carb. I always hated that horse's name.
Yeah.
It's an ugly name. He ended up stakes place too. So had 3 stake horses, and didn't spend but 20, 22, and 25.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I had to be right.
Yeah.
If I wasn't right, then you did.
Well, I'm sure you still have that same feeling now. I mean, you had to be right when you were over at Tattersalls.
I completely respect people's hard work money. It's not something that you take lightly. You hit all the details, and you're going to be wrong a lot.
Right.
I mean, that's the humbling part about it. You are going to be wrong, and you have to address that as well and help them on an exit strategy on a horse that can't run. But that's the challenge of yearling sales, and so this is a 3 or 4% auction, so there aren't that many stakes winners in here, and yet I think we're going to end up leaving with 16 horses. And Torpedo Anna came out of this sale.
Oh, wow.
For $40,000.
Cool.
She's actually on the catalog cover.
I bet so.
You probably can't see that. They added.
I bet
they should have just had her on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I got gypped on that.
That's funny.
Anyway, it's a good company, Phasig.
Good stuff, Kenny. Well, thank you so much. And we'll wrap up this episode of Horses Now. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for these comments and questions. Please keep them coming. The more comments and questions you send us, the more things we have to talk about, so thank you for doing that. Kenny, as we always say,
see you at the races.
See you at the races.
In California, we're going to have to do the show from California next week.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Sunny California.
All right.
Thanks for listening.